near the park to spark the effort that eventually transformed the park.
An elderly man was stabbed to death on his evening walk. It was shocking. And that brought the community together. And one of the things that we realized was that this park was a blighted park, that there were a lot of problems in this park.
From a problem park to a treasured neighborhood resource, Poinsettia Recreation Center at 7341 Willoughby Avenue is today a point of pride. Amenities include a new walking jogging path, new outdoor basketball and handball courts, upgrades to the baseball fields, a new children's play area, and outdoor fitness equipment.
The equipment uses your own body weight, so you're really very difficult to strain yourself. It's just really good and innovative.
And the family behind one of LA's most well-known restaurants helped turn the celebration into a picnic.
We are giving away free hot dogs because Pink's has been part of the Poinsettia Park community for 73 years.
My parents used to bring us here. They used to have a little pool here and swim in the pool, and we've always been active in the Poinsettia area because we did live in the area for many years, and we still do.
And perhaps many years from now, this day in this park will be remembered just as fondly by a whole new generation who calls this neighborhood home. Funding for the new park improvements came from Quimby fees and Proposition K. Free Wi-Fi at LAX and solar power, a hot trend here in the city. Also honoring a local volunteerism organization. These stories and more in City Beat. Los Angeles International Airport has become the largest airport in the U.S. to offer free Wi-Fi service to passengers. Passengers may use Wi-Fi basic services for free for sessions up to 45 minutes or opt to pay for premium and uninterrupted Wi-Fi service for a 24-hour period. The Wi-Fi service is being provided by Advanced Wireless Group. Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa said in a statement that free Wi-Fi at LAX furthers the city's initiative to provide free or low-cost internet services throughout the city. Solar power on rooftops in Los Angeles has nearly quadrupled over the past 2 years, thanks to the participation of LA residents and businesses. The LA Department of Water and Power had put its popular solar power incentives program on hold for 5 months to catch up on a backlog. But a year after it reinstated the program, the utility says participation has increased dramatically over prior years. The LADWP estimates that at this rate of demand, the city will exceed 100 megawatts of net metered solar capacity by this fall. The LA City Council has approved a proposal by Councilmember Richard Alarcon to provide funding for Hansen Dam weekend patrols. The goal of the 10 weekend patrols, which are considered overtime pay, is to help keep Northeast Valley safe during summer parties. The money, nearly $45,000, will come from community redevelopment funding earmarked for the councilman's district. Police will be on the lookout for loud parties, illegal fireworks, and other behavior that can encroach on family-friendly activities at the recreation area. ShareFest Community Development, founded in 2006, is a nonprofit organization that mentors youths and fosters volunteerism through service projects. ShareFest first started as a community work day, but transformed into something much more after its founder realized a greater need.
We started to make a lot of connections and met some great people. We also saw our community facing a history of broken families, drugs, violence, and a hurting education system.
This short video on ShareFest was shown in council chambers recently when the organization was honored by Councilmember Joe Buscaino. Since its inception, the organization has mobilized over 35,000 volunteers to complete over $6.5 million worth of projects for cities and schools in Los Angeles County. Students at Campbell Hall were really excited to start their first day of school, all thanks to a brand new art and education facility. Yana Kay has more.
Campbell Hall student Sean Holohan is practicing playing the steel drums in this new music room. He says the new room is a big improvement from the old one.
And now we have as much space as we need, and everything here is made for our purposes.
This new music room was built and designed to maximize space and improve sound quality, from special drapes to cork floors.
It's just inspiring to be in this space and to be a part of something that's just amazing. All of the students, and myself, we're very fortunate. We feel very lucky to be here.
The music room is just one part of the brand new Arts and Education building, featuring 40,000 square feet of LEED certified classroom space and underground parking.
It also put us on the map with Studio City. So this was a community campaign. We have frontage right on Laurel Canyon right now, and we will be bringing the community into the school for all kinds of events as well.
Campbell Hall students, faculty, and various city officials gathered in Studio City for a ribbon-cutting dedication ceremony officially opening the new building.
It's a place where kids can really learn and grow.
The building features drama, photography, video production, art classes, and 2 dance studios. I'm standing in the new music studio lab, and let me tell you, this looks more like a professional recording studio than in a high school classroom. Now take a look at this. The kids have brand new Apple computers where they'll get to learn how to record, edit all types of audio.
I love it. It's really beautiful and it's new and clean, and it just looks really good, and there's a lot of new things that we didn't have before.
New and shiny things that officials hope will help guide these students to a bright future. I'm Yana Kay for LA This Week.
The Studio City School took 4 years to build. For many LA residents, back to school time often means a trip to the shopping mall. But for struggling families, back to school can be an especially trying time financially. As Anna Marcos tells us, 2 events help to make this time of year a carefree one for parents and kids.
People lined up for hours outside the Los Angeles Mission as the homeless shelter celebrated its yearly back-to-school block party, street fair, and backpack giveaway.
That's very nice of them giving us things and them paying for it and us enjoying it.
Up for grabs, 1,000 backpacks complete with school supplies, 1,000 pairs of shoes, and more than 3,000 meals.
I'm good. I just got my 5 kids, my wife, and just taking care of my kids day by day, every day.
I bring my granddaughter for a present. I'm just hungry.
Looking at the lines, it's easy to see the statistics come to life. According to the 2012 Kids Count data book by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, 1 in 4 children in LA live in poverty. 1 in 8 live in extreme poverty. And for about 1,000 homeless LA children, Skid Row is home.
To them, going back to school, it doesn't mean that they automatically get their shoes. Doesn't mean they automatically get that new clothes. Doesn't mean they automatically get those school supplies. So this is a wonderful thing for our young people to show them that we care.
At one time, we had like about, 2,000 people. Now we have like about 10,000 people.
Out in Cypress Park, another boost for families sending their kids off to school. The Cypress Park Family Source Center handed out more backpacks. There were also meals and activities.
I think these backpacks just kind of give hope to the kids, Some of these kids, their families are kind of on a downside right now, and I think these backpacks are just kind of a symbol of hope, that these kids can actually have a future. So I think these backpacks are just a step forward for them in their life.
A good meal, a new pair of shoes on their feet, and a backpack on their backs. And these kids are ready for a new year of the ABCs. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
The groups and organizations that took part in the 2 giveaways included the offices of council members Jose Huizar and Ed Reyes, Skechers Shoes, the Community Development Department, Soul for Souls, and U.S. Bank. In this week's list of things to do, Brian Setzer Orchestra at the Bowl, a concert of lullabies, and a martial arts expo. Enjoy the Hollywood Bowl's fireworks finale when the Brian Setzer Orchestra takes the stage on Saturday, September 15th at 8 p.m. The 3-time Grammy winner, Brian Setzer, is known for taking chances with innovative and daring musical styles, as well as resurrecting rockabilly and swing. The Hollywood Bowl is located at 2301 North Highland Avenue in Hollywood, but you are encouraged to take shuttles to the Bowl. Setzer is also performing at the Bowl that Friday and Sunday. For tickets and information, go to hollywoodbowl.com. And you can help raise money for veterans at Spectrum Athletic Club's TayFit Fitness, Health, and Martial Arts Expo on Saturday, September 15th from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The expo will feature martial arts demonstrations by leading instructors in the community, complimentary personal training assessments, and the latest in group fitness classes, and much more. The expo will be held at the Spectrum Athletic Club at 22235 Sherman Way in Canoga Park. Call 818-884-5034 for more information. Tony-nominated star of stage and screen Valerie Pettiford of Broadway's Fosse and HBO's Treme announces the release of a new solo album and a Los Angeles concert date. To celebrate her second solo album, Velvet Sky, a collection of original lullabies to be released in October, Pettiford is performing a rare one-night-only concert on Sunday, September 16th at the LA Gay and Lesbian Center's Renberg Theater at 7 p.m. The Renberg Theater is located at 1125 North McCadden Place in Hollywood. For tickets and detailed information, go to lagaycenter.org. There will be storytelling, dancing, and more at the family-friendly event. And that's a look at some upcoming things to do. 231 years ago, a small group of mostly Spanish and Indian settlers founded Los Angeles. To mark the anniversary, city leaders hosted a big celebration at the very spot where the city of Los Angeles got its start. Anita Bennett has more.
Happy birthday to you.
With music, a giant cake, and a march from the San Gabriel Mission to El Pueblo Monument, Los Angeles leaders marked the city's birthday.
231 years ago, this city was founded by a walk from San Gabriel Mission to this very spot. And from this very spot germinated what is now 485 miles of a great, great city.
In 1781, 44 Spanish settlers founded LA in the area now known as Olvera Street. To mark the anniversary, city leaders invited residents to a public birthday party.
Really happy to celebrate here with diverse people and great music. But the most important thing is that diversity is the strength of this great city.
And a diverse group of people came out for the party, including a famous Mexican telenovela star.
Oh, it's amazing. I think LA opens their arms to everybody who wants to come here. It doesn't matter where you come from, like he was saying, France, Mexico, whatever. They open their arms, so that's beautiful. And I just can say thank you and happy birthday, LA.
Meantime, another resident said she wanted to show her gratitude to the city's original settlers.
I'm thankful, grateful and thankful. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have what we have today.
The celebration ended with a little more music, including a serenade from city leaders. I'm Anita Bennett for LA This Week.
In 1781, just 44 people, the original settlers, lived in LA. Today, according to the latest census figures, the population is just over 3.7 million. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ellen Chang. A reminder that you could catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Faculty, Mom, Dad. Today's lesson, how to exercise with your kids and save the planet. First, you must believe. B, that your children really are the future. Second, you must do. Instead of jumping in the car, let's go for a walk, or a run, or even a bike ride. No pollution, no oil, no gas. And as long as we obey all traffic safety rules, we're cool. Lastly, you have to live. Live into our big, beautiful, healthy future. Be, do, live. Watch the road.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
joined by Mr. Bill Rosendahl. Welcome back, Bill. I want to thank Mr. Garcetti, Mr. Koretz, Mr. Labange, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Zine, and Mr. Rosendahl for being here on time. Sergeants, please get on the horn. Call other members. Oh, Mr. Alacon is here. I need 2 more members so we can get this started. I need 2 more members. If you could please get on the phone. Again, I want to thank members Alacon, Garcetti, Koretz, Labange, Reyes, Rosendahl, and Zine. I need 2 more members. Mr. Englander has just arrived in the back. Sergeants, I need 1 more. Members, if you're in your offices, please. Mr. Parks is here. We do have a quorum. Mr. Buscaino is here. Good morning. I want to welcome everybody to your Los Angeles City Council meeting. Today is September 11th. The council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Madam Clerk, we're going to do something a little different today. I will first ask that you call the roll.
Alarcon, Buscaino, Cardenas, Englander, Garcetti, Weezer, Carrasco, Krikorian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Zine, Wesson. 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, normally at this time we would go through the agenda, but since it's September 11th, I think we want to do something a little different. So I'm going to ask everyone in the council to please rise as we reflect on what occurred 11 years ago on this day. And when we finish this moment of silence, I will ask Mr. Bill Rosendahl to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, a moment of silence. Thank you. If you would remain standing, Mr. Rosendahl, if you would please lead us in our flag salute.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we reflect on 9/11, put your hand over your heart and say with me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. It's great to see you. I'm going to get with you. I'm going to ask everybody here today to do us on the council a favor and welcome back Bill Rosendahl. Give him a round of applause, Bill Rosendahl.
Great. Mr. President, if I may, I would like to thank,
of course you may,
as I've gone through a situation that many of you, millions of us are going through this great nation, and it's cancer. I was hoping I would never have that word attached to me, but it did. It came out of the blue on the 20th of July when my internist told me, you have a serious issue. I had an MRI done, and indeed I do. I have a form of cancer that comes out of the utero, and apparently it's been developing over a year or the last 3 or 4 years, but it was never detected until the 20th of July. So now I have gone through 13 hits of radiation. I've gone through 2 hits of chemo. I have another one next week. Things are working. The good Lord is with me and with all of us on this earth. Be you a believer of Jesus or the white light or God is love, or God, love yourself, love your neighbor, whatever your feeling is, we're all connected. So what happened to me was thousands of people around the world with the new social media and hundreds of my constituents have responded. The amount of love I've gotten has been phenomenal. People have brought food to the house. People have prayed with me. People have sung with me. They put all kinds of positive energy toward me. There are a lot of people involved. I just want to rattle off a few, if I may, Mr. President. Javier Becerra, the Congress member who represents the Latinos, gave me a call. Karen Bass did. Maxine Waters and my sister Janice Hahn. And then, of course, George McGovern calls. He says, Bill, it's George McGovern. And we went all the way back to our relationship in 1972. It was really sweet. Marilyn Bittner in the audience there, who's been a major player on all this with me. And so then Warren Beatty calls. Bill, it's Warren Beatty. And so I put them with the nurses and the doctors. And before you know it, Arlo Guthrie called, and then Dennis Kucinich. So when you get these calls from people of your past, it really has a positive impact. And it's all about positive energy, folks. The mayor called. President Weston came over the house. Tom LaBonge, I had to kick him out of the house. He came 3 times. But I must tell you, those nuns' bread is the best. And I ate a piece this morning for breakfast as well. Of course, Wendy Gruhl came by, Eric Garcetti came by, and of course, Jan Perry called. So the mayor candidates are all around my edges. You know, and then all my colleagues called. You all had something nice to say. You all were just encouraging me to get together, and I got to tell you, that meant a whole lot to me. I'm looking for Hedy Elkoti. Where are you? Hedy? Well, when he comes in, he is my partner of 17 years. Many of you have never met him. But boy, did he come over the house and clean it up, because I have a lot of animals. Everybody in the animal world knows I'm connected to animals. So I wasn't as clean and as pretty as one would like. But he was there when Eric Garcetti showed up at 8:30 in the morning. So Hedy spent days cleaning the place down and staying with me and giving me encouragement. And when he shows up, I want to make sure you meet him. And then, of course, my nephew, Chris Rosendahl. Chris has lived with me for 15 years. He played the lead for me on that. And that was fantastic. And Chris takes the night shift. You know, then there's Adam Hamilton. Some of you met him when he was here, Mr. President. We were talking about Swami X Swami. He starts me in the morning from 7 to 11. And then there's my other nephew, Frank Rosendahl, who flew in the other day, and he's making a new bathroom, which will be handicap ready. He's redoing stuff in the yard. So the connection with family, if it wasn't completely 100% before, has now become an incredible support system. And that's my blood family and my love family. It's all connected. I want to thank Laverne, one of my caregivers, Louie, one of my caregivers, Kyle and Sean. I want to thank my 3 massage therapists who've been doing massages for me for 20 years, who all have stepped up, Drew and Jean and Elena. And of course, the Rosendahl team, hosted by my chief of staff, Mike Bonin. Come over here, Mike. Frankly, my staff jumped into every aspect in the district. And with the social media being such a connecting element, it had a phenomenal effect. And I want to thank the LA Times for putting my name in an editorial this morning about the sidewalks. I thought that was a good omen from the LA Times. So there's a lot of people to thank, and I want to thank everybody. I want to thank God. I want to thank all those who believe God is love, and love thyself and thy neighbor as thyself brings us all together. Jan Perry, I appreciated your phone calls. I'm looking forward to seeing you Friday at my fundraiser, as a lot of other people are going to be doing.
You see Bonner going...
Anyhow, just so you know, I'm running for a 3rd term. Not only will I get elected, but I intend to live another 20, 30 years. I figure 96 is the year I want to go out. There's my Brentwood leadership over there. Good to see you, too, as well. Thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Bill. It's wonderful to see you. Bill Rosendahl. Bill Rosendahl.
One more time. My partner, Hedy Elkoti, has been putting up with me and my insanity for 17 years. We spend quality time together all the time. And I want to thank you, Hedy, for being right there for me in the biggest of needs I have now. Thank you.
All righty.
Hold that chair. Hold it. Yeah, Mark, hold your chair.
Okay, Madam Clerk, first order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Okay, Mr. Koretz moves, Englander seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Reyes moves, Mr. Krikorian seconds. That brings us where to the agenda?
Yes. Items 1 through 5 are items noticed for public hearing. There is a request to continue item 3E, G, H, I, and J to October 12th.
Without objection.
And the Department of Building and Safety reports that items 3B, C, and D may be received and filed inasmuch as the liens have been paid.
Without objection. Okay, do we have any cards?
Yes, cards on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay. The next section, well, yes, Mr. Rosendahl?
President, item 6 I'd like to call special.
Okay, we're going to items 6 through 22 now. So item 6 is called special by Mr. Rosendahl. Members, any other specials? Okay, let's prepare to vote on the remaining items.
Excuse me, Mr. President, there's a request to continue item 7 to October 30th.
Without objection. So on the remaining items, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. Next.
Items 23 through 30 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes required for consideration.
Without objection, those items are now before us. Do we have cards?
Cards on items 23, 25, 28, and 30.
Okay. Members, specials? Okay, 27, Mr. Alarcon. Mr. Buscaino?
Mr. President, we need to reconsider item 22, please.
Okay, let me get through this. I'll take care of that.
Same thing.
Okay, so, Ms. Perry, I see your button.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay.
Mr. President, item 30.
Okay, 30 for Mr. Rosendahl.
Hey.
Okay, before we vote, why don't we go back to item 22 for reconsideration? So on item 22, let's have a vote on reconsideration. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, now let's go back to items 23 through 30, and let's prepare to vote on...
Excuse me, Mr. President. There's a request to continue item 29 to September 18th.
Without objection.
And also item 24, there is an amendment forthcoming, so that item should be held on the desk.
So let's hold 24. So let's vote on the remaining items. Let us, Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, now that brings us where?
On the supplemental agenda, item 31 is an item for which public hearing has not been held. 10 votes required for consideration.
Without objection. Are there any cards on this item?
Yes, there's cards.
Okay, so we'll hold that item for cards.
That brings council to items called special.
All righty, let's start off with item number 1. Mr. Walsh, HollywoodHighlands.org.
John Walsh. Check out our website. We put up a new post the other day with all our election recommendations and lots more. Item 1, I won't say anything about Mr. Rosendahl until public comment because I don't want to be arrested here. Very strict here, unlike the Democratic Convention. Number 1 is an important issue. This is the weed and brush abatement assessment schedule. In fact, the city of Los Angeles does an excellent job on weed and abatement. You want to see a mess? Look at Oakland. They had a fire similar to ours a few years ago. They lost about 100 homes. We had a fire like that. We lost no homes. So, incidentally, you are much less corrupt in Oakland, okay? And having lived in Oakland for a couple of years, I know the story. Weed abatement control, keep up the good work. Speak to you later, HollywoodHighlands.org. Go to it now.
Thank you. Okay, that's no more cards on item 1. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item, item 2, Mr. Arnold Sachs on item 2. Good morning, Mr. Sachs.
Good
morning. Thank you again, Arnold Sachs. This is Prop K funds, park funds. And with the advancements that the city actually has made, more or less, if you want to call it, regarding the parkettes and the new park that was just erected in Jan Perry's district of all places, when they took over the house that had been foreclosed. Again, go back to how was the house torn down? What agency tore it down? Because Councilman Zine has a problem with some property in his district that he can't get torn down. But why is LA lagging when it has this kind of money available, when it sees other programs in other cities that are available? Why did Councilman Garcetti ask for a public-private partnership to develop more parks? We have this funding. We have situation with new developers creating Quimby funds that go unspent because they don't meet the requirements of the property being available within 3 miles of the construction. But you have this ability to create these new parkettes as seen in other cities like San Francisco and New York. Why is LA following? And again, by the way, the city of Long Beach is selling its carbon credits created by the trees in the city. Has LA looked into that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Okay, let's open the roll on this item, Madam Clerk. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, we'll quickly go to item 4, Donna Pearman. Donna Pearman is called item 4 special. If you please come forward.
It seems like this is Donna. I come all the way downtown to have to speak, and why you're spending money like this when you could be using that money to open up Van Nuys City Hall. So apparently you have the money. And this one was over there for another school. So you have the money. So, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't, you should open up Van Nuys again.
Let's stay on the item, Ms. Pearman.
Let's see, how much was that again? Shoot, I forgot how much that was again. Well, I left it back there. Okay, stop spending the money. I'll have better on number 5. I'll misplace it.
Thank you. Okay, let's, Madam Clerk, prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Ms. Perry, are you ready for item 30? Then we'll defer to Ms. Perry.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And if Jerry Miller would please come forward to the center table, Chief Legislative Analyst. I think Mr. Miller's on the council floor.
Jerry Miller?
Somebody could call him.
Well, here, why don't we defer? I'll take up another item real quick, and then we'll do a public comment card, and then we'll come back to item 30. Donna Pearman. Donna Pearman is general public comment. General public comment.
Well, it's really good to see Bill Rosendahl back. But I still think you're really wrong for making me come all the way downtown. There's a lot of inexpensive ways to keep the voice of the valley going. But you don't even try to think of ways to let the people of the valley speak. And of course, it's against the disability rights, like Miriam Fogler, who can't come here. Then she has she's no way that she can come downtown and take 2 to 3 hours on bus transportation and walk 8 blocks It is tiring me out coming all the way downtown, waiting 2 or 3 hours instead of my usual half hour to an hour. So this is really wrong. Anyway, you're wrong to stop Van Nuys, the video conference, taking away the voice of the Valley. And let's see, you want to spend, oh yeah, here it is. You give tax exemptions to businesses, car dealerships, parking lots in the film industry. You need to say that it's a very small amount that you're to save, but in the meantime, you're giving it all away and giving tax exemption to all these businesses. It shows that you care about the businesses than you do about the voice of the people. You give, and pretty soon with the Brown Act going away, people will find out that their right to speak will be highly curtailed. Anyway, let's see. Anyway, this is really wrong. You don't want us to come down to speak about the city employees, about the rights that they have, and the rights of the taxpayers. You want to keep that down, and that's why you wanted to close down Van Nuys, so that people in the Valley won't be able to speak. And in this way, you can overspend. You used to spend that in a day on fee waivers. You used to spend $10,000 in one day. So don't say to me that you want to save money. You don't care about saving money. And Garcetti for mayor.
Thank you. Okay, now Mr. Miller is here. We're going to go back to item 30. Ms. Perry, there are a few public comment cards, but I would recommend that we hold those cards till the end.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Miller. There's some questions that I think people have, and I know the public has. Just to lay this out so you can speak to them, my resolution requests that we reduce the public hearing notice from 24 days to 10 days for the proposed convention and event center project. The city and the project developer have a deadline which, if not met, may delay the start of this project more than 1 year. Now, this can be averted if we modify the public hearing notice. The city has highly scrutinized this project every step of the way, and it has been an extremely open and transparent process. And I do want you to talk about the number of public hearings that have been held and share that with the public. The proposed stadium and the new hall of the convention center obviously will create thousands of jobs when we are in dire need of employment opportunities. The risk of delaying this construction more than 1 year is something that I don't think we should do. There's been full public participation at all of the ad hoc stadium committee meetings, and there will be a full public hearing at the City Planning Commission before this comes back, and all future committee and council meetings on this proposed stadium. And just to reiterate, just for a factual statement again for the public, there is no public money in this deal, not a dime. And so, Mr. Miller, if you would outline, not only for my colleagues, but for the public listening and watching, what this technical adjustment means today.
Certainly. Well, to be clear, what we're talking about is the council hearing on this. There was a state law mandates a 10-day notice requirement for public hearings on development agreements. Now, it has been the planning department's practice to give 24-day notice, which they did for the planning commission. So the 24-day notice was given for the planning commission. So what we're really talking about here is the council hearing. Now, I was conferring with the Department of City Planning. There isn't really a set policy. It's just been their practice in many instances in the past to notice the hearings sequentially, not concurrently. But there have been other instances where we've done this, most recently in the Wilshire Grand project. The Howard Hughes Center in Council District 11 was another project, so in which the 24-day notice was brought down to the minimum of 10. But again, the Planning Commission hearing was noticed more than 24 days in advance. There has been in excess, and also, of course, this project has been out there in the public for some time. There have been in excess of 200 community meetings on this project already. They have focused on the project itself as well as the community benefits package. So this is also a project that has had extensive hearings in the past. Relative to the deadline, again, under the state law and under the CEQA challenge time frame, the NFL has made it clear that their intent is to have a decision on any team relocations in March of next year. So the plan would be to have the council hearing on the project on the 28th, and if that gets approved, then the clock starts ticking. So that will already put us into the March time frame. So further delays on approving the CEQA and approving the transaction could result in the project actually not being finalized and could endanger the ability of AEG to attract a team.
And so, Mr. CLA, Mr. Miller, tell us in a few short words, and what is your recommendation with respect to the action we need to take today?
I recommend it be approved. I think it's consistent with what we've done in the past, and this project has had a great deal of public scrutiny.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl.
With the privilege, could I sit for a second for this and stand? Is that all right?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
I want to thank Ms. Perry for the questions you just asked, which are key to me. I'm a process-oriented guy. I believe we need process to do what's right. The second thing on the AEG business, I am strongly in favor of the NFL either giving us a team, cutting a deal, or we're able to create two teams ourselves. Whatever we can do to get an NFL team here is key. Is Mr. Lewicki here by chance from AEG? Okay, he's not here. So would you explain, you mentioned earlier that Howard Hughes, we waived some of that time frame. Explain when that happened and how that resulted in the success in my district that I'm very proud of.
Well, it's been a very successful project. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact dates, but that is one example in which there was concurrent notification for the Planning Commission and the council, as I recall, but there was less than the 24 days for the council hearing, but there was the notice for the Planning Commission hearing. And again, the 10-day requirement is in state law. It's been city practice to do 24 days, but you have deviated from that practice in the past.
Okay, now, we as a city, meaning the taxpayer, is not going to pay a dime until they show us a paper that they have a team. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the city, the taxpayers won't pay a dime in any form or fashion on the event center.
Yeah, and I love that, and I love when Ms. Perry made that very, very, very clear to all of us. Why did they ask for 10 days? Is there some big shot meeting and these big boys are going to be in the room and I got to hustle them? I mean, what's the deal with those guys who own these NFL teams?
Well, the importance of resolving this by the end of the month has to do with the challenge periods on CEQA.
Right.
And the necessity to have this resolved before any team will commit to move to Los Angeles. And the NFL has already announced the time frame for that. The applications of interest are due in January, and they intend to make a decision by March. So with the end of this month, when you count out the time period, this should get resolved in about the same time in which the NFL is prepared to make a decision.
So you're comfortable with that?
I am.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Council President. Mr. Miller, when we look at process, and I want to thank my colleague, Councilman Perry, for her stewardship in the ad hoc. In the actual ad hoc, we have the chairs of various committees. The chair of Planning, Land Use, and Management, which is myself. The chair of the Department of the Transportation Committee. And what is the other chairperson that we have there? The Housing Economic Development.
Housing Economic Development. Again, Ms. Perry, who is the district, and the chair of, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank on the last chair.
But the point is, the issues that were raised by each chairperson focuses on impacts that this project will have, or we are studying to see how we can mitigate impacts given the role of each chairperson. Would I be accurate in saying that?
That would be accurate.
Now, when we look at the Planning Commission in process, we typically go from Planning Commission to Land Use and Management Committee to focus on land use issues. Just for the record, will we have time for the Plum Committee, or is the assertion that during the ad hoc process we're going to engage issues raised by Commission within the ad hoc so that we do not have to extend this any further?
The plan would be for the ad hoc committee to take up the entitlement issues on the 24th. Again, Planning Commission is hearing the issue on the 13th, this Thursday, and they've noticed over till Friday if necessary, so they could have a 2-day hearing on it, and then it's expected to be in the ad hoc committee on the 24th. And the last member, I'm sorry, that I left out was chair of TCT, which has jurisdiction over the convention center.
So the bottom line with the planning and land use issues, we will address them on the 24th.
Yes.
Given the results and report from the Planning Department and Commission on the 13th.
Correct.
I just want to make that very clear. The last time we went through this process, when we first opened up Staples, I happened to chair that committee. At that time, we had just only land use issues to address. We did not have the convention center. We did not have all the other outlying issues that has essentially impacted the different committees. So that is the biggest difference between that experience and today's experience. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
So again, I want to thank you for your hard work. I want to make sure that the public understands that we've been very diligent in addressing the issues of how the local neighborhoods are being affected. So in this resolution, you can see verbiage that speaks to green space, open space, issues that deal with job training, issues that deal with local benefits, and that is in writing in this document. I know there are other areas we want to explore, but I still think we have time to do that between now and the end of this process. So I thank you, Mr. Miller, for your hard work.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jerry, on this 24 to 10 calendar days or 10 working days? There's a big difference between the two.
The state law requires.
Pardon me?
The state law requires 10 calendar day notice.
So that would include weekends?
Yes.
So that's really not 10 days because Saturdays and Sundays there's nothing taking place. So instead of 10 days, it's really 8 days. Is that correct? Because if we exclude the Saturdays and Sundays, 10 days Monday through Friday, but if you're going to include Saturday and Sunday, but if you're going to exclude that, include that in the 10 days. In other words, are they working days where we're in operation, or are they just straight 10 days, including Saturday and Sunday? And if we do that, then that's really, I don't think, what we want to do. I understand the 24 to 10, but I think it should be 10 days where people can actually engage somehow.
Again, in reality, what we're talking about here is 17 days as of today, when it'll be before the council. There was the 24-day notice for the Planning Commission hearing.
And that was done?
Yes.
And now we're talking about taking this down to 10 days. And my question is, those 10 days, I believe they should be Monday through Friday, unless we're going to keep some operation open on Saturday and Sunday.
Well, again, I think the 10 days is a matter of state law. And as I said, in fact, the notice is more than 10 days, but the 10 days is required under state law for a development agreement.
But is it calendar days or working days?
Calendar days.
Well, that's kind of disingenuous. Because Saturdays and Sundays, there's no one going to answer any of the issues or questions.
Well, again, I think if you'd like, we can seek to change state law. But again, the point is that we're meeting all legal requirements relative to the notification. And in fact, the 28th, which is the day that it's expected to be here in council, is 17 days from today.
So they're actually getting 17.
Right.
So, but we need to be honest with it by saying this 10 days includes Saturday and Sunday, which is included in the 10 days, but you're going to get 17 days. But the 17 days is really going to be less than 17 days because you're going to have another Saturday and Sunday in there. In other words, actual working days versus the calendar days. Does it make sense?
I do understand what you're saying, yes, sir.
And if state law is already messed up in many areas, I don't want to make them any more confused than they are.
Okay.
Including 7 days a week.
Yes, we will more than meet the 10-day notice requirement under state law on the development agreement.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. I think. Okay, Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry. Thank you, as always. Mr. Miller, thank you, because you've helped build this city. And the key, if this is right and all works, people will get back to work. So I rise to support this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to try to keep this simple, there's a whole public comment period surrounding CEQA that is completely unrelated to this, right? So
That's correct. The draft EIR was put out in April. There have been comments throughout. The final EIR was put out in August. The notice was given for Planning Commission, et cetera. Yes.
Nothing in this motion modifies that in any way?
No.
The 24-day period was already or will be met as far as the Planning Commission hearing is concerned?
Yes.
And this reduction is consistent with the state law on the development agreement?
It's consistent with the state law and it's consistent with other projects that have come before you.
It is a slight modification from our standard procedure, but it's a modification that we've made traditionally in the past for other projects when timelines require.
That's correct.
All right. So just in order to address some of the concerns that Mr. Zine raised, and because there is a reduction in the time frame, the one thing, I mean, I think this seems perfectly reasonable to do, provided the public has ready access to the actual development agreement. So by what means is the development agreement itself made publicly accessible?
I may need planning to help me out on this. I know that all of our documents that were released are up on the city's website. I'll need to confirm whether or not planning has the development agreement up on the website.
Okay. So if we could just verify that, and then I would also ask that each of the council offices be provided with a copy of the development agreement so that we'd have the opportunity to effectively weigh in within that shortened time frame prior to the council hearing. I think that would be helpful to all of our offices as well.
It is all on the planning website.
And it's already available on the planning website. Okay. Yes. Thank you very much.
Ms. Perry to close, and then we'll go to public comment.
Mr. Miller, if you could just reiterate what takes place once the council has approved, and assuming the mayor agrees, and we have completed the legislative process, then again, just review, if you can, what takes place next.
The following council approval would be the time frame established under state law for challenging the environmental documentation. And that process should run its course again if the council does approve it on the 28th. Then the challenge period starts. There's a 30-day period to challenge, and then a period after that to resolve that challenge. And that time will run its course in March of next year, which is consistent with the time frame that the NFL has announced that they want to make a decision on team relocations.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perry. I'm going to call 3 people. I'd like each and every one of you to come up to the center microphone. Arnold Sachs, John Walsh, Eric Aries. Please come forward, Mr. Sachs, followed by Mr. Walsh, followed by Eric. Mr. Arnold Sachs.
Well, yes, thank you. Good morning again, Arnold Sachs. Time constraints have been tweaked for this. What and the other projects that it was tweaked for? Somebody mentioned the center at Howard Hughes. And Mr. Miller mentioned no public money for the event center, but he just mentioned the event center. He didn't mention the other portions of this project. My suggestion is, why don't you just waive the 24-day hearing period and make it just a straight 10 days like you're doing for this project? That being said, let me just read a few articles here. This is from 9/8/11, George Skelton. This is a story about the LA Stadium. Not as sweet a deal as the legislature granted 2 years ago to the potential rival stadium in the City of Industry. So that would have been 2009. AEG goes deeper on football proposal. This says Tim Lewicki has talked with Roger Goodell, gave AEG the okay to speak with representatives. This was July 4, 2011. This is council approval football project moves forward. This says Philip Anschultz will be buying a team. That hasn't taken place. AEG on the clock. This is from 8/22/11. Tim says, after the council vote, that he hopes to start construction June 1st, 2012. That didn't happen. AEG completes Farmers Field EIR. He expects the project to be passed sometime in the late summer of this year. That's happening. NFL spoils AEG hope, says no LA team in 2012. Rooney, NFL to LA in 5 years. That was just 2 weeks ago. So what are we to believe about this stadium? Why all of a sudden, 2 weeks, 14 days will cause immutable destruction to AEG? We heard that before with the hearing on the...
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Thank you. Mr. John Walsh. Mr. John Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. See the monster post we put up? AEG. Do you know what AEG stands for? Always evade governments. That's what AEG stands for. And, you know, I usually don't praise the LA Times, but they did print the emails from Lloyd's of London that they got from AEG. And anyone who read that can see that one of the reasons that Michael Jackson is dead is because of what AEG did to him. This isn't John Walsh, psychotic ravings. It's in the LA Times. It's their psychotic ravings and Lloyd's of London psychotic ravings. But they bought you out. You know, Alarcon isn't sitting here, Buscaino isn't sitting here, Cardenas isn't sitting here, Garcetti is picking his nose, Parks isn't sitting here. They don't care. They're getting their money. AEG, always evade governments. HollywoodHighlands.org. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Labange?
South Korea, students who are here, please rise and be recognized for their work and touring and learning. Please rise. Kamsahamnida, Chingu. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. If you please state your name. I don't know if I got your last name right.
That's all right. I write messy. My name is Eric Ades. I am with the Playfair at Farmers Field Coalition. The Playfair at Farmers Field Coalition has been working with residents of Pico Union, South LA, and downtown from the beginning of this development process. And at the time that we started, we were very concerned that the impacts and the issues related to the population of those living around the stadium would be skipped over to rush this process through. Unfortunately, we've seen that happen. People have mentioned the development EIR process that occurred a few months ago, where folks were given 45 days to read a 10,000-page draft EIR. That was at the time insufficient in terms of its analysis of the impacts that the stadium would have on downtown and South LA and Pico Union communities. We were concerned then, and we are still concerned. We are against reducing the public notice hearing to 10 days. And it's important to note, too, that reducing the period only puts this project at greater risk. The analysis in the EIR is insufficient. There are mitigation efforts around parking, transit, traffic, population, housing, green space that need to be addressed. And if we slow down, we could address those right now. But if we rush it through, we are putting the project at further risk by skipping over the necessary analysis that needs to go into this project, which is going to affect the communities around the stadium for decades. And because of that, we are against reducing the public notice hearing. We've heard a lot about the urgency to get this done, to get a stadium, to get a team here. We also want to represent the fact that there's an extreme urgency of the residents to protect the community health and the livelihoods of those who are going to be living with the impacts of this stadium for decades, those living in the immediate communities of Pico Union, South LA, and downtown. So we are against reducing the public notice period to 10 days, and we hope that City Council will do a better job of representing the interests and needs of those who are most vulnerable and those who will bear the brunt of that. We have said from the outset that we are not against the stadium project being built, but we are against it being built on the backs of those who will be most impacted, which is poor and low-income communities of color that live around the stadium. So we hope that you will vote against reducing the period. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more speakers on the queue. Madam Clerk, let's prepare to vote on this item. If you would please open the roll, close the roll, and then tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay. Let us now move to item 6. We have a commission appointment. Mr. Rosendahl, item 6.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, when we bring commissioners in, and I'd like the commissioner to come on up and sit before us all. Mr. Ken.
Please, sir. Welcome.
Welcome to our city council. Tell us why you want to be on the commission, what you think about it, and especially the issues that you'll have to face.
Good afternoon, city councilmen and ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to say thank you for having me here, and I'd like to say...
Closer to the mic, please. Bring the mic up a little closer to your mouth.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to say thank you to mayor and councilmen supporting all the city works and also transportation department. I met city of Los Angeles office a couple years ago. I had a chance to become a member of small business development committee. I was invited. I was helping and giving service. And since then, last December, I had a chance to become a business delegation, mayor's Asia trips. He went to bring investment to create job in Los Angeles. I was part of it. I was so proud, and I got the investment from Korea. Mr. Mayor giving me a chance, and he gave me an appointment to Commissioner of LADOT. I believe his intention was my background is business, strictly business. I'm not an engineer or lawyer or any business related to transportation. So what I assume he is thinking maybe I can think of outside of boxes as I can bring any advice or idea from outside of a department.
Okay, well, let's just take that point outside the box. The mayor has showed national leadership on Measure R by accelerating 12 major projects that will employ 156,000 people. And when it's done, LA County will be connected. We on the west side are suffering the worst gridlock in our history right now as you're sitting here as a commissioner. So when you get appointed to this commission, I want to sit down with you and talk about the gridlock and the Measure R and how we're moving. And with your thinking out of the box mindset, I think that's very helpful to be more creative than we've been. But I got to thank him for what he did, and I look forward to you working with us and changing that. And as chair of the committee, let's vote for him. Let's give him a chance to give us some insight. I know Mr. Koretz might want to say something, but I got to tell you, welcome aboard and thank you.
Thank you very much.
President.
Thank you very much. We do have two speakers on the queue. Councilman Koretz.
Well, we had a good discussion with Mr. King in the Transportation Committee, and he has a wealth of business experience, and I hope he can use that to help make the department more effective and efficient. And I think he's got a rich background and experience. I know he'll do a great job. He's highly motivated to do this, and I appreciate your willingness to serve in this capacity, and I hope everyone on council will vote for him.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Koretz. Councilman Perry.
Mr. King, I'm very enthusiastic about this appointment, and all I ask is when you begin to serve, if you would give special attention and awareness to the development of the exposition line, because the exposition line is the line that will connect the city east to west all the way into Santa Monica, and do all that you can to encourage people to get out of their cars and to use that line. We had a good weekend. The weekend we had a Dodger game, the Clippers game, a Kings game, a Lakers game, a mixed martial arts event, and a bicycle race beforehand. And 30,000 people took the exposition line in from the park and ride from La Cienega. And the thing that surprised me more than anything, it was reported in the Daily News that percentage of those individuals had come in from the San Fernando Valley. So I just ask that you please keep that in mind in developing policy and debate, that it's so important for us to properly cite park and rides as we go further west, so that people will feel very compelled to leave their cars behind to go back and forth across the city.
Thank you. Yes, I will keep in mind.
Thank you, Councilman Perry. Our next speaker, Councilman Labange.
Thank you very much. You're a great constituent of the 4th District. All is what's said. Traffic safety, traffic safety, traffic safety. For pedestrians, for cyclists, for all the mobility that's there. I'm just going to give you a little note with traffic safety, traffic safety, traffic safety. We've had some tragedies in our cities just this last short weeks on Highland Avenue, on Ventura Boulevard, on Western Avenue, and other places as well. I want to thank you, and also I want to work with the VOC, who's a legislative analyst, to get drivers training back in our schools, because some of these accidents with training could be improved and prepared on. Thank you very much. Kamsahamnida.
Yes, I will, sir. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue. Thank you, sir, for your service. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, forthwith. Now, Madam Clerk, our next item, I believe, is item 23.
Item 23, call special for cards.
Okay, we do have 2 cards on 23. Arnold Sachs and John Walsh, please come to the microphone. Arnold Sachs and John Walsh.
To give Mr. Sachs a seat closer to the front.
He's 20 years younger than me. Should be able to make it. John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. This again is an appointment of Antonio. Remember Antonio, the only Democrat booed at the Democratic Convention? That Antonio, the mayor. We would like to support the Harbor Commission. I think Mr. Kraus will do a good job. Of course, he's not going to be on there long because we'll have a new mayor and then Ms. Gruhl will decide. But in fact, I think he'll do an excellent job because how can you not do, I mean, he has no connection to kiddie porn. As you know, our mayor put someone on who had a trove of kiddie porn. And incidentally, he was convicted of the kiddie porn. And the mayor said, never heard of him. Let's vote for Doug Kraus. He'll do a very, very good job. HollywoodHighlands.org.
Thank you. Arnold Sachs. Mr. Sachs, would you like to speak, Councilman Rosendahl? Just a minute.
Would it be okay? Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. President. Welcome aboard. The harbor is a big deal for us. It generates an incredible amount of income for our region. It is the most productive port in America. So you're going to join a great group that are doing great things. First thing I want to ask you is I'm very happy about the community negotiations that my colleague Papa Joe over there has been doing over the years, and as before that, Janice Hahn. That's going really well. But I want to know if you can get some mitigation credits out of that I could use in Playa del Rey, where I have a whole lot of issues that could afford that money. Are you familiar with those mitigation credit ideas?
I'm very familiar with that, and actually, you recollect I'm a neighbor in Playa del Rey.
Fabulous. Oh, you live in Playa del Rey. You are a constituent of mine. So this is a win-win for me. So I can count on you sitting down with me talking about how we might get those mitigation credits.
I would love to. There's a lot of restrictions on what they can be used for, but actually some of the areas around the wetlands and Biondo Creek do potentially qualify for those. So that is something we would love to do if we can.
Fabulous. Not only will I support you, but I will work with you on doing that. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you, Councilman Rosendahl. And let's resume with public speaking, then we'll come back to the queue. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Mr. Rosendahl, because my question was regarding the mitigation money provided under China Shipping Terminal Expansion Court Settlement reached in 2003. This is a little story from the Daily Breeze from last week, 9/8/12. Somebody writes about the buffer that was created by the Port of Los Angeles, the North Gaffney Beautification Project. And the buffer was created for a park to allow the local residents to use it. But they eliminated the parking lot that was part of the project, but was done by the State Lands Commission, which rules how port property and funds can be used. But it really wasn't port funds, it was mitigation funds. But if they eliminate the parking, the project can't be used by the public. Now there's another project that's going to be developed with mitigation funds. Will they eliminate the parking from that so that it can't be used by the public? And if they eliminate the public usage, then it's not really living up to the conditions that were created by the settlement. So I'm wondering, because you are a reappointment, sir, and I should be talking to the council, but they're so into whatever they're doing. If you didn't question the fact that the commission eliminated the parking part of the project, what else will you not question in the future regarding other projects? Because basically, building a project without having parking kind of goes in two different directions. Yes, it settles an agreement between the city and an entity, but it leaves the public out in the cold. Now, somebody mentioned Janice Hahn. She must have been around because this is from 2009. And Councilman Buscaino, I'm not sure if he's up to date on it, but nobody questioned what the commission was doing for the state, and now there's no parking for the project. People can't use it. That makes perfectly good city council sense.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, Councilmember Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to support this reappointment. Commissioner Strauss has proven leader when it comes to expanding the port, making it green, and continuing to ensure that we are the most competitive port across the world. So I want to thank you for your effort and your commitment and what you will continue to do for our port, not only making it a working port, but also making it a destination. You've supported bringing in the USS Iowa, bringing in Crafted to make it our waterfront one of a world-class attraction, and we ought to move forward with that. I want to thank you for being committed to that and also being a good neighbor. $1.5 billion in community projects and investments. I want to thank you for that on behalf of my district and my community. So I strongly urge, I want to congratulate, I know we'll have enough votes here to move forward on your reappointment, and thank you for your continued service to our great city and our harbor communities.
Thank you. It's a great opportunity in San Pedro. There's so much to do down there.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We do have Councilor Labange. Do you still want to speak, Councilor Labange?
As Mr. Rosendahl brought up Iona Creek, I also know that the Harbor Department of Los Angeles did tremendous work 30 years ago in San Diego County because we didn't identify places in our region. Yes. So whether it's in the Big Tujunga area at Hanson Dam, Mr. Alicorn's area, or the Ferndale section of Griffith Park, or some other wetlands, the Los Angeles River, look for places in our Southern California, tight Los Angeles region that we could benefit for those credits.
I would love to do that. And living here myself, even more so.
Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, again, thank you, sir, for your hard work and your service. Looking forward to working with you. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Congratulations.
Okay, now we're going to move to item 24.
Item 24 calls motion for cards. An amendment, an exhibit to the ordinance has been circulated.
Okay, John Walsh, and I think this is Nina Royal. Oh, in fact, Mr. Walsh, you're on 25. Nina Royal.
Good morning. I'm Nina Royal, and I'm the safety chairman of the Sunland Tujunga Neighborhood Council and treasurer-elect. I am concerned about the excess property that you're going to be selling off. Right now, you're considering taking foreclosed homes and turning them into pocket parks. My area, especially in the Tujunga part of Sunland Tujunga, is park poor. We're the most densest area in the entire community. We do not have enough park space. The one lot that we did have, we were hoping to have a park, has been designated as an SB 1818 project. We need parks. So I would like to see the actual lots that they are selling off. About 6 years ago, we were presented with the idea of selling off public land, and they came to the neighborhood council and they actually had all the land that was available, and we voted at that time not to sell off the land. Once the land is gone and they put in a parking lot, they don't take out parking lots to put in trees. So I'm asking you to please be very vigilant about this property before you sell it off for short-term money that you're going to be spending and you'll never see again, to turn these parks back into the community and turn them into public parks. Please take a good look at that, and I want to see where these parks are going to be. I should say the land that you're going to sell off, because we should be able to use those. I hope, Councilmember Alarcon, are you listening? Please. Thank you.
Okay, on this item, Mr. Buscaino.
Mr. President, thank you. I just move that the ordinance be amended to include the attachment reflected in Exhibit A. If I can just take a second.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Mr. Alarcon.
Just to respond to Nina Royale, the public commenter, that none of the properties being considered are in the 7th Council District, and most of them are in CD 11. There's one in CD 1, one in CD 8, one in CD 15, and one in CD 5, but there are none in Sunland Tujunga. Thank you.
Okay, let's prepare to vote on this item. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, let's go to complete general public comment. Arnold Sachs. This is Arnold Sachs, John Walsh, Cindy Cleghorn. Please come forward. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you again, Arnold Sachs. And thank you, Mr. Alarcon, for clarifying that regarding the property being sold. I guess they're really park rich in CD number 1 and the other districts that were named, so that this property can't really be used for any of the parks or the parkettes that the city has decided on. But I really wanted to talk about the foreclosure, the foreclosure mess that you've created by enacting the $1,000 a day fine for not upkeeping that property. You know, part of the problem in the state and the city was when you cut positions or positions were eliminated or people were transferred out of departments, people were saying if you eliminate the departments that generate revenue, you're in fact cutting your own foot off to spite your nose. So here's a situation: you have rent escrow account problems that collect pennies on the dollars, basically, when you have a real estate law that's not being upheld that could be collecting $1,000 a day per property that's been blighted or abandoned. Councilman Zine last week was over the top in his discussion how he has property in his district that he can't get anything done to because there's no money, there's no redevelopment money, there's no funding. But at $1,000 a day with, I don't know, maybe a couple of hundred different properties in all the districts, Councilman Perry, New Park, they tore down a blighted home, but no money was collected on that blighted home for its violations of the Real Estate Act that you so diligently talked about and passed in city council chambers. Doing nothing, leading from behind.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org. See the Mitt art, see the Willard Ratz art on our website. Only here will you see the candidate for president of the Republican Party covered with rats. First of all, I would like to thank the courts, the federal courts, which ruled and struck down public comment rules in the city in Orange County. We are now allowed to be insolent. Now, I've been insolent a number of times, but from now on, you can't throw me out. Mr. Eric Garcetti tried to throw me out when I said that you were playing with yourselves. He said that was insolent. So you can hold your insolence 4 ways, and you know where you can put it. You know where you can put it, and your candidate can retrieve it, your rival. That's insolent. I just wanted you to know what I just said was insolent. I could have been thrown out last month. I can't be thrown out now. Thank God for the federal courts. Pat Morrison, we want her back. The racist, sexist pigs at KPCC do not give a dime to KPCC. Mr. Rosendahl, I'm glad you came clean with your medical record. That's all I asked was that. I got hate mail about it. He's not here now, but in any case, Rosendahl has told us what his problems are, and incidentally, he broke your own rules because he plugged a fundraiser. He's not allowed to do that. But then again, you're allowed to break your own rules. I'm the only one who's not allowed to break the rules. No on Proposition J, and I just want you to know that the psychotic ravings of John Walsh spread throughout the world because when our mayor got up in front of the world at the convention, he ended up as the only Democrat to be booed. And let's face it, I hear a lot about God. Don't you forget that half the people at the convention booed God, okay? So I just want you to know that.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Cindy Cleghorn, followed by Daniel Jordan Jones, followed by Michael Carrion.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, council members. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I'm chair of the Neighborhood Council Congress coming up a week from Saturday, September 22nd. Distributed some information to you this morning and looking forward to seeing you there. So this is your City Council formal invitation from me. This will be a full day here at City Hall, and we'll have a series of workshops here on this floor and also on the 10th floor. So looking forward to lots of networking, seeing you all here, and just wanted to formally thank you and look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
This Planning Commission just gave itself the ability to go from 12 planning commissions a year to 36 planning commissions a year by further reducing the public's ability to have the time to prepare for those now twofold more meetings. Now that you've had those 200 council meetings, or not 200 groups, or 200 of those, now that you've identified the problem, you've given the public less time to respond to them when you're now ready to implement the program. The project is a great one, but the curious point is that the timing in which you brought this proposal up. Now that you know what the expenditures you're going to have to put out for it, you just gave the ability of the public not to be able to push back or get what they do deserve. This vote you just took today is going to come back to get you, right where you just tried to give it to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion. Come on, you are disrupting the meeting. Mr. Carrion, please come forward.
Okay, my name is Michael Carrion, and I live in the 14th district. As you see, I have my No Weezer hat on today. It's got to the point now where either we have to ask Mr. Weezer to leave office, or we have to help him leave office. He's got a new deputy chief or deputy in the Al Sereno office that can't get weeds cleaned. He can't return calls. All of you sitting here who are not paying attention can probably hear me. I've had several sidebars with Mr. Huizar regarding the issue. He comes up and says, I'm upset, I'm irate. I am, when I can't get any communication with the incompetence that he hires. You're only as good as your staff. And when your staff can't get the job done, you stand here and you say, give me a call, please don't come here and speak badly about me, and I will more than happily return your call. Well, I've called Mr. Huizar several times only to be blocked by one of his staff members. Say, yes, I will deal with the issue. I will call you. So Mr. Huizar is a liar. He does not return my calls when he says he will. So I guess from now on, we will just have a negative campaign for Mr. Huizar. We will wear the No Huizar hat. We will wear No Huizar t-shirts. We will vote no on anything Huizar votes for. All we ask for from Mr. Huizar is to be represented in the 14th District like he represents Bring Back Broadway. The El Sereno District is blight. Mr. Buscaino can attribute that to part of the process of a wall, retainer wall that hasn't been built in 8 years. That's lack of leadership on Mr. Huizar's behalf. Yet he sits here and praises everything he does for Bring Back Broadway. So if Mr. Huizar wants to talk, he has my number.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion. Okay, that concludes general public comment. Madam Clerk, let's move to item 3. Item 3 was held special by cards. Carlos Serrano and Arnold Sachs, please come forward. Carlos Serrano and Mr. Sachs waves on this item. Carlos, come forward. This is item 3. Mr. Parks? Hold on, Mr. Serrano.
Yes, I'd just like to have item 3F continued for 1 week.
3F?
3F.
Without objection. Mr. Serrano?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a card that you wanted to speak.
Yes, the office told me to come back next week.
Okay, here, if I can get you to come forward and explain what has happened. Yes, sir. What's going on with Mr. Serrano?
Yeah, morning, Council. My name is Charles Kalibal. I'm here to represent the department in this case. There was an error. I told the lady over there, there was an error on the item. It should have been 3A, but the gentleman wrote 3E. So what I told Mr. Carlos is that we continue this for 1 week until next week while we iron this out. What happened in this case, though, is that Mr. Carlos owns a single-family dwelling, but he was using it as a business. He was allowing his tenants to use it as a business, an auto-related business, and he had like storage vehicles on the property, and they were collecting money for this. So we asked him to rectify that. He failed. We issued him with an invoice for $603 to pay. He failed to pay that, and he has been adamant. He also lives in San Diego, so he couldn't be in touch with his tenants while they were misusing the property.
Okay, so let me make sure I have this straight. So you're asking us to continue item 3A?
Yeah, continue item 3A for 1 week while we try to iron this out.
Work with Mr. Serrano. Okay.
Yeah.
So we will continue that 3A without objection. Now, are there any more items where it relates to item 3 that are left for us to vote on, Madam Clerk?
Yes, K and L.
Okay. On that, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, so Mr. Serrano, you have 1 week to work things out with the department. Okay, let's take up item 25. Mr. Walsh, I've been informed that you have run out of time. Oh, wait, it's not Mr. Walsh? Okay, I'm confused, which it happens on a regular basis, Mr. Walsh. You still have some time. So when you come upstate, we're going to do 25 and we're going to do 28. So we're on item 25, held special by John Walsh, HollywoodHighland.org. Mr. Walsh.
I'm at a loss for words. No one ever confuses me with anybody else. I'm John Walsh. There's no John Walsh imitators, are there? No one looks like me, acts like me, talks like me, walks like me, or dresses like me. And nobody is loathed as much as I am by the city attorney, deputy here. Number 25, this is housing debt collection. Yeah, debt collection. You can waive this. Did you waive the debt collection on the 2 Good Samaritans who were electrocuted, who got a bill for thousands of dollars from the ambulance service? No, you didn't do that because the 2 dead women never made a contribution to your campaigns. In other words, all over the United States, all over the world, we found out if you're a Good Samaritan, what will happen to you, and if you're electrocuted, and instantly that was the DWP's fault because the whole system had too much power in it. You have never seen this in the history of America, someone being killed by a puddle, only in LA because of your power supply. And what happened? Dead. That person is dead. 2 people are dead, and now their relatives have to pay for it. That's why we're asking you on the debt collection to show a little bit of, can I say Christian mercy? I know the Democrats are going to get upset for me if I use the term Christian mercy. I know, but because Christian is bad. And I just want to say HollywoodHighlands.org, and although Rosenthal's name is up there, I can't see him. Where is he?
Okay, Mr. Sachs, that was, now you are out of time. So on this item, let us, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to briefly address some of those offensive comments about the tragic accident that happened in my district. And I just wanted to let Mr. Walsh know that within less than 24 hours after our reaching out to the public, we had already raised sufficient funds to be able to pay for every single person who was transported in connection with that accident. So none of them will face a single penny of costs relating to that.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Okay, so on this item, let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, now we're going to go to item 28. It was held 4 cards. That individual's out of time, so there are no speakers on the queue. On item 28, let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, now we're going to go to item 5. Donna Pearman, if you could come forward on item 5. Donna Pearman.
And this time you're not going to interrupt me, because you certainly allowed John Walsh a lot of leeway. Anyway, you have $25,000 in tax-exempt loans for Windward School. Certainly you have the money for video conferencing for Vanna.
No, Ms. Pearman, stay on the subject. Stay on the subject, please.
It is still enough on the subject. What does John Walsh talking about himself have to do with the damn subject?
Okay, Donna, come on. Stay on the subject.
Anyway, I still think if you can, I don't understand why you're using this 25,000 tax-exempt loans when you said you don't have the money. You say you don't have, certainly all of a sudden you have this tax-exempt loan, but you didn't have what when I had for the video conferencing, and I just
Ms. She is not talking about this pass-through.
This has nothing to do. Donna, this has nothing to do with the video conferencing. So just please stay on the item.
Okay,
please.
I don't think it's fair because I think you allow Highlands a lot further.
No, that has your time is up, Ms. Pearman. I'm sorry, but you must remain on the item. Okay, members, let's vote on this. Donna, calm down. Donna, calm down. Calm down, please. You're disrupting the meeting. Okay, Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Since this is the second time that this issue has come up today, just for the record, these TEFRA loans are not funded by the city. This costs the city not one penny of general fund or any other kind of revenues. This is a federal program that just merely gets administered through the city.
No, and I think most of the people in this room get that. Ms. Pearman is just going to continue to try to talk about the video conferencing, and I respect her for that. But let's prepare to vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Let's go to item 31, which was held special by cards. I believe, Madam Clerk, that Mr. Sachs's time has expired, so there are no speakers on the queue. If we could open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, Mr. Buscaino, are you ready to take up item 22?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. This item, colleagues, when I came in as Chair of Public Works, I heard from all stakeholders and felt it was necessary to move this process forward. I believe in making the process by which cell equipment is installed in our city utility poles should be a transparent process, and including the community in the problem-solving process and lending an ear to the community in this issue. The community should be involved in knowing what's going on in their neighborhood. From what I've learned from the cell phone industry, they feel the current AGF process is a fair process and has worked fairly well in the past 10 years. What we're doing today is taking away the exemption for utility poles and instead saying that we as a community want to know when cell technology is going up on a utility pole in front of people's homes. And most of the time the neighbors will support this, as we all want better phone and data coverage. I want to thank my colleague Bill Rosendahl for bringing this to our attention and hope that this recommendation brought before you by the city attorney will address his concerns.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Some of you were here when I was here at this point, but back in October 2009, I put a motion in to say, let's talk about this whole cell phone issue. Unfortunately, the big boys, the AT&T, preempted local involvement and made it a federal issue. But we in the community are the ones who live with it. And since we don't seem to have the power, I got so angry over this issue that in Westchester, it was Maxine Waters who stopped one from getting right in somebody's home. And then I had another problem in Playa del Rey, and that's where the Coastal Commission agreed with me, and we stopped one there. We now have an issue of it in the Palisades. One was in a church. They wanted to put it on top of the church. I said, you're crazy. You got to work with the community groups who live in those neighborhoods. There was a woman named Ellen Stern Harris in the 80s who was a journalist with the LA Times. And she said, we don't know if we're getting vibrations off of that create issues. That was in the 80s. I used to talk about it on my television show. So now I'm an elected official with really, as my colleagues know, the power isn't really rested with us. It's a federal issue. So I want to thank my colleagues for doing and allowing me to be part of this motion, which clarifies it and gives us some interest and some support. And that's why I put this motion together, which frankly came after many years of getting this through the process. So if I have any questions, it really has to do with where we think how many feet we need to do, and some of the community people with their issues. I obviously want to hear from the community people, but I've been historically against it. But I'm more than willing to work to try to modify it that can find some common ground. So I want to thank my colleague for presenting it, and I'd like to ask you what you think about all this.
Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel from the City Attorney's Office. But first of all, I just would like to say it's wonderful to see you here in Chambers, Councilman.
And I want to thank you, Ted, because you understood where I was coming from all these years.
Absolutely.
And worked with my staff, especially Norm Culla, who is a big player within the Palisades in West LA who's worked with you, and he's also a lawyer. So I want to thank you for working with him as well as the rest of my staff.
Norm has been fabulous. He knows as much or more than I do on all of these issues from a legal standpoint and from a practical community standpoint. I reviewed the motion 22C. I'm heartened to see that these elements or elements that were consistent with the report that our office prepared and submitted at the Council's request. It utilizes some of the tools that are available for improving the way we regulate these cell towers as they go into the community. The principal recommendation or tool that we said was available was removal of the exemption for utility poles. I get complaints from a lot of people. I get the emails, the letters. That's far and away the most common issue that community members have is something has appeared on the utility pole in front of their house or in front of their business, or a pole has been replaced with a much taller pole, and they didn't know that it was coming. Right. On some occasions, there is an AGF permit that comes along with one of those utility poles, because there might be some cabinet that's going to be on the ground nearby. Historically, Public Works had approved the AGF permit for that cabinet, but the pole wouldn't even be part of the application because it's been exempt. Staff has improved that and now requires, as part of the disclosure, all associated equipment, including the things that are not regulated. But the elements in the motion go a long way to plug that gap in our ordinance. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to try to address them with you here.
Yeah, I know that we're working hard together, and I appreciate your sensitivity to the community. But what is the advantage of encouraging installations on the street lights throughout the city? Just curious.
Well, keep in mind that in the right-of-way, telecommunications companies, they have a right to be there. It's essentially a franchise-like right that the state has given them through the Public Utilities Code, Section 7901. So that specifically authorizes telecommunications companies to install poles in the right-of-way. What we can do by utilizing the city's existing streetlight infrastructure is to get that equipment onto a streetlight pole without having a brand new pole put in the right-of-way.
And that's a good idea, but what is the current public notice requirements placed on the industry? I mean, how much notice can they give neighbors and say, hey, we're doing this, and maybe work with them?
Well, currently, pole-mounted facilities are exempt from the AGF ordinance, so there is not a notice requirement whenever a facility is mounted on a pole. Streetlights are a little different than utility poles because that's city equipment, so we have an inherent proprietary interest in what goes on our own streetlight equipment. We can tell people yes, no, we have a great amount of impact on the designs because ultimately these are our streetlights and we have to approve any designs on them. But when we co-locate a cell tower on, frankly, a utility pole or a street light or any other existing infrastructure, then we save the street from having to accept one more pole.
Well, that makes sense.
Mr. Rosendahl,
I'm sorry.
Be mindful of the time.
Sure. Just one more question then.
I'll try to be brief.
At one of the public hearings, it was suggested that it may be a good idea to create a time measure for expiration that would be a 10-year time frame. Can you explain that?
Well, yes, I'll be happy to explain it. Right now, these permits, once they're issued, they're essentially valid for as long as the facility is being used. If the facility is no longer being used, then there's procedures for the removal of that. But as long as they're continuing to use the facility, their permit will remain in effect. Any of the permit conditions that were applicable need to continue to be followed, but as long as they're doing exactly what the permit said that they could do and they're maintaining it in a way that the permit requires them to maintain it, then the permit will continue for as long as they need it.
Okay.
So what some cities have done is they put time limits on it, which would essentially mean the permit would be for a limited time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that substantive answers, and thank you for what you've been doing with us in community, and I look forward to hearing comments from the public before we vote on it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Reyes, and just so that you know, the public comment has been satisfied already. Mr. Reyes?
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, in Plum Committee, we've been working and responding to these issues for the past 12 years. This provides us a tool by which we can deal with the aesthetics of these cell towers, which is what we can do given all the restrictions from the FCC. Would that be accurate?
Yes, yes.
Now, what's in front of us, and I want to thank my colleagues, Councilman Buscaino and Councilman Rosendahl, it's putting forth policy that expands the notification when a cell tower is being proposed. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It would expand the area of notification for people that would be receiving a notification from the cell tower company or the telecommunications company about the installation. It would expand that. So,
what is notification today?
Currently, the notification pattern under the AGF ordinance is adjoining property owners, so essentially the property right next to the site, the abutting properties, the next-door neighbors, and the people across the street from those. In addition to those property owners that would receive notification, also the relevant council office, neighborhood councils, and homeowners associations. Although the homeowners associations is a rather difficult notification to make because many of these associations are not, they're below the radar. They're not as easy to know about their existence of as compared to neighborhood councils and council offices.
So one version was to expand it to 100, and the current version, as being suggested by Councilman Rosendahl, is 500 feet. Is that right?
Well, as I look at motion 22C, it talks about a notification of 250 feet. So 250,
okay.
250 linear feet, which would mean along the street, as compared to a radius, which would potentially capture people on, parallel streets and the like.
So be on the street frontage.
Correct.
So now the neighbors who are impacted will also be notified that are beyond the immediate circle.
People beyond the adjoining and abutting properties, yes.
Okay. Colleagues, I support this. I had an experience in my district in Cypress Park where there was actually a mechanism being put right on the sidewalk because it was on the right-of-way, and there was a great concern for the radio waves and any kind of impact to health, and we were very limited as to what we could and couldn't do given the restrictions of the FCC. And so I'm glad we're taking this step. In committee, we did get some input from the local folks. I believe this is a positive step. The notion of putting it on public utilities like light poles, is that another motion? Is that a policy direction that we should be recommending from your point of view? Could you respond to that suggestion?
Certainly, as I said, the existing ordinance creates an exemption for utilities mounted on the streetlights or the utility poles. There's been historically a lot of complaints more about the utility poles and the streetlights. I know at board we often look for, or the board often looks for alternative sites, including streetlights. And if there's a way to make those facilities work on a streetlight, that's often a preferred method because it does reduce the amount of infrastructure that's in the right-of-way. In other words, one pole instead of two. And I would support that recommendation.
My last question is abandoned cell tower equipment. Who's responsible for taking those down?
The person who had the permit to install that equipment is required to remove it if it's been abandoned. And when we look at the ordinance, it's not part of the recommendations, but what we do typically is make any kind of minor technical changes and things like that, ways to improve the ordinance once we're in there fixing it. Because you've raised the issue, we would certainly take a look at the provisions regarding abandoned structures and make sure that they're as strong as possible.
I'd like to make sure we follow up on that. The issue of accountability and enforcement is crucial. So when it is abandoned, who
mindful of the time, Mr. Reyes?
We'd certainly take a look at the ordinance as a whole as we fix the...
I look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Buscaino and Mr. Rosendahl, who has fought the fight on this for many different years, and proud to join with both of you and Mr. Reyes today in these amendments. I support the proposed amendments to the above-ground facilities ordinance, but I think as we go around the city from the Oaks to Sherman Oaks, from San Pedro to Pacific Palisades, you hear just how bad some of the impact of poor design has been in our communities. And it's funny because here we are in Los Angeles, which is the center of design in the world now, arguably, and we have some of the ugliest streetscapes anywhere in the world. And I think we've heard loud and clear from people across the city that they want stronger regulations and greater input on where cell towers can be placed in our communities. So I think these amendments do that. And we don't have to choose between good design and good cell coverage. It's a false dichotomy. We're always told, well, it's either bad cell coverage or else this has to go here in this way. And when we see, as Mr. Labange I think has a good picture, some of these arms that come off of utility poles with cheap plastic tubing, we can do better, LA. We know we can. And so I say what I said in committee, and I've followed up since. Some of you were there. I've reached out to Samuel Hoy, who is the president of Otis College of Art and Design, and he and I want to do a design competition. When you think about streetlights, if any of you have ever been in my district to a place we call Vermonica, it's at Vermont and Santa Monica across from our street lighting yard. And there where there's a Staples in the mall, you can go and actually see the different pendant lights and the different Beaux Arts lights and the different street lights for the city of Los Angeles. You can almost go shopping if you're a community looking at street lights for the first time. In fact, I think tomorrow night we're going to be in Elysian Valley opening up a whole new neighborhood to street lights. And it's a great place to go. Why we don't have that on our street furniture, why we don't have that for our cell phone towers as well. A design that we could embrace, a design that communities could look at, and one that wouldn't stick out as if somebody slapped it up, as they often do, last second, but it's up there permanently. The long-term costs of living cheaply in the short term are very expensive, both aesthetically and at the end of the day in the overall texture of this city. So, let's listen to the needs of our constituents. Let's pass these amendments, but let's continue to look creatively. And I invite different communities to be a part of this as we look at a design contest where we can come in and see and then put it out there and daylight it and see which ones people like and which ones they're excited. And I want to thank the folks from Brentwood and from Palisades who really, have been a great part of pushing this forward. But it's really all throughout the city. It doesn't matter what part of town geographically, high income, lower income. Everybody, I think, wants to have control in their communities. They want to have good-looking communities, and we can, and I think this is an important step in that direction. Thank you.
Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank my colleagues, Mr. Buscaino, Mr. Reyes, and particularly Mr. Rosendahl, not only for bringing this forward, but for gracing us with your presence here today. This is wonderful that you're actually here to speak on this item. This is a case-by-case battle that I've been fighting constantly in my district since I got on the council. Questions of notification, questions of aesthetics, problems with locations, and real questions about the necessity of each pole and not having to prove it. And I've sort of felt like I had to do this with one hand behind my back the whole time. This gives us an ability to handle these issues appropriately, and I'm very excited and very thankful that we're getting to this point. The one thing I would ask is whether we need to implement any kind of or should be looking at a temporary ICO while the revisions are being made to the AGF ordinance.
Another word for the temporary ICO would be a moratorium. I just do that to kind of highlight what it is for the record. I think those kinds of laws, there's been a lot of discussion about that in committee. I think there's great risk whenever we put in place a moratorium. I know other cities have. The city of Los Angeles is often different than other cities. Sometimes cities get away with doing things that we simply cannot because of our size. Ultimately, it's a policy consideration for the council. It's not necessarily before you on this particular motion. I would be concerned about the risks associated with any kind of moratorium. What I can assure you is we would do everything we can to bring you these ordinance changes as quickly as possible, given the importance of it and how long people have been waiting for real change.
Yeah, if there's a way to expedite this as much as possible, I certainly would encourage it. I know we've all been facing these battles in our districts, and it would be great to get the tools to handle this issue as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And on that note, there's one issue that really should be raised, and I'll go ahead and raise it, in terms of the impact of the ordinance change. If we make the change that is requested to remove the exemption for utility poles, that will increase the number of applications that will be going through the Board of Public Works. They have a great staff that handles these things. Nevertheless, and I'm going to let ultimately Public Works speak for itself as to what the impacts of that change will be on their staffing requirements. Again, you know, we have some time, and we'll bring you an ordinance if you go ahead and adopt what's before you, but ultimately there may be an impact on that.
And certainly, if, from my point of view, if it meant we had to add a staff person or a half a staff person to help handle the needs, I think it absolutely would be worth it in terms of handling the negative impacts that this issue has had in all of our districts, I'm sure.
That's fine. I raised the issue. I've been more focused on the regulatory aspect and not the, you know, staffing impact.
But I think we should be aware of that as well, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Mr. Labange.
Thank you very much. A picture's worth 1,000 words. Here is what you don't want to see, which they see in a neighborhood, and they've been fighting it for. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Okay, thank you. Joe, Big Joe. Doesn't need to be. Information is knowledge is power. Include the neighborhood associations. They've been there longer and continue to be. Don't shut them out. Neighborhood councils and others. Thank the Los Feliz Oaks for being down here. And we could do this, industry. We could do this. It makes sense. Thank you very much. It should be the same for every city in the county. 88 other cities don't allow this. Thank you.
Mr. Labange. I think you have a commitment to my staff person. Mr. Englander.
Yeah, I just wanted to also rise and thank our colleague Bill Rosendahl for everything he's been doing to fight the good fight, not only with his health, but to protect our communities, and continues to do that with legislation like this. You know, we had an issue with above-ground facilities and these cell towers, and where they were actually installing these boxes. Believe this, it's crazy. Installing these boxes on utility poles at eye level, not even higher than that. And they were sticking out 3, 4, 5 feet in some cases. And we literally had blind people walking into them because their poles, they would feel the pole, but then the box would be sticking out. They would walk face first into these boxes sticking out on the poles. That's crazy. And so we need these kinds of rules and regulations to be updated to protect not only our community and the aesthetics of our community, but to protect those most vulnerable who you don't think of. And those people who are installing these should be thinking of everybody that will be impacted and affected. And so, Bill, thanks again for your fight and coming here today and working on this, as well as Mr. Reyes and Mr. Buscaino. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Buscaino, to close.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for your comments, colleagues. What you have before you, item number 22C, that I was proud to co-present with my colleagues, Mr. Rosendahl and Mr. Reyes. And what you have here in this amendment is a fair compromise in which you have both the community and industry concerns have been addressed. And most importantly, in looking at this item, I'm always looking for in our agenda community impact statements from our neighborhood councils, and to know that we had a number of neighborhood councils to support and move forward on this item, including one in my area, the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. I want to thank Diana Nave and her team for just lending their voice to moving forward with this issue. So with that, I ask for your aye vote and move forward on the amendment number 22C. Thank you.
Okay. Let's, Madam Clerk, prepare to vote on the item. Let us open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, thank you. And
Excuse me, Mr. President, there is a request to send item 31 forthwith.
Without objection. Okay, and I want to thank all of you that have come down today. We did satisfy the public hearing request, but thank you for all your hard work, all of the meetings you attended, and Mr. Buscaino and Billy, good job. Mr. Zine, did you want to?
Waiting for next one. Next one.
Okay, item 27, Mr. Alacon.
Yeah, council members, I'm concerned about item 27 because we followed the recommendation of the BTAC committee to change the composition of the Board of Review on these kinds of matters, and I was curious as to whether or not BTAC has been consulted on this item. Mr. Zine?
I don't know.
Well, I don't. Council members, I think this may be one that you are not fully informed on, and I urge you to get up to speed, because essentially what you would be voting on is something that would be against the wishes of the Business Tax Advisory Committee. And before we move on this measure, I think you should understand why the BTAC committee recommended the expansion on the Board of Review. And I don't understand, and there's no justification in the information that's provided to us on item 27 as to why we're going to change the Board of Review contrary to what BTAC had recommended. So I'm at a loss here. I don't know who can speak to this issue, but I absolutely think we ought to hold this until BTAC has an opportunity to consider it.
Thank you. Mr. Alarcon's correct about the VTAC and their review. We do support that. However, what we're looking at is the process that's been in place with the Housing Department, the Fire Department, other departments, and the write-off of millions upon millions of dollars over a long period of time, and delinquency in many, many fees that are due the city. We do recommend that there be modification. I have no problem with informing or having VTAC be a part of it. They were not a part of the discussion that we had in committee. The department representatives came by and discussed the issues. Department of Transportation, Housing Department, Fire Department, etc. And there was a recommendation that we review the process, we renovate the process, and we inform and we come up with better way to collect delinquency. Now, these are taxes that are due for a variety of reasons. People who incur fees and taxes, and these are folks that aren't paying. So what the focus was with these different departments, and we have a representative here from the Department of Finance, Treasury, to say that recommendations, and the Inspector General was also at the meeting, that recommendations are coming forward that we make some changes. Now, with VTAC, which is the business tax, this is regarding fees from the Housing Department, the Fire Department, the Department of Transportation, other fees that are already established, well entrenched, and it was the collection process that we have fault with, the collection process that's not very diligent in collecting those dollars. Now, VTAC is on the business tax environment, and we have no problem with the business tax being modified and VTAC being a part of it, but the issues that we had from the committee was the uncollectibles amount that were piled up over a long period of time with different departments, which if you have parking tickets and you have millions of dollars that are due in parking tickets, I don't know how VTAC would address that, or if you're using fire services, how VTAC would address that. But these are regulated fees that are already part of the process, the Housing Department, and how people were not paying what is due the City of Los Angeles. So the focus was not so much in the business community, but much on people that are incurring fees from public works, etc., to the tune of millions of dollars, and basically skipping out and not paying fees. For example, not getting the documentation on who the property owner is, not following up on who the property owner is, not knowing who to send the bills to. So we made recommendations in the report that we modify, and I'd like to hear from the representative here from the city to say how we can improve our collection process. That's what this is about, improving the collection process on debt to the City of Los Angeles. Not going after the business community, not incurring additional fees to the business community, but how do we better structure our system to collect So if you incur fees on the housing department, how we're going to be able to collect. And currently the process is millions upon millions of dollars that's not being collected, and that's the focus of what we have. Mr. Alarcon's correct on the business, but this focus was basically on the system that we have in place that has not really proved as effective as it needs to be. So if we can have the representative speak on this issue and also address Mr. Alarcon's concerns, how there could be a tie-in with VTAC.
Yes, sir. Todd Bowie with the Office of Finance. And just to clarify, there are two different boards of review. There is a tax board of review that BTAC has been involved with, and this particular item is a board of review for non-tax accounts receivables, and that is a board of review that's chaired by the controller, and it's basically for write-off purposes. And so the item before you today is addressing that non-tax board of review. And essentially what's being looked at there is we have three members, treasurer, finance, and the city administrative officer, or sorry, the controller. And the item before you is that we would come back basically with a change to the ordinance to allow the city administrative officer now to be part of that board of review for non-tax account receivable write-offs. And in addition to that, it also discusses making some other various changes to some of the administrative requirements relative to departments who submit their accounts for write-off. And also there's an item there that discusses looking at the collections management function within the city and how that may be organized in order to effectuate improved collections.
Then I would ask, is there a way we can clarify which board of review this is?
Yes, there it is. It's definitely the non-tax accounts receivable board.
Could we make an amendment to clarify that this is the collections board of review, or how is it legally recognized in the code?
Probably by the code section.
It's noted in the ad code where it clearly distinguishes that particular board is for the
no, I'm just saying for the purposes of amending this motion to clarify that this is relative to the collections board of review. Is there a way we can amend this to make it clear?
I think we can. We should work with the city attorney's office to do that.
We don't want to interfere with the business environment, Mr. Alarcon. What we're trying to do is people who
I understand that, Mr. Zine. I have no problem with that, but I'm just saying that technically this could be misinterpreted.
We can certainly work with the city attorney's office to clearly denote the purpose of that particular board.
Okay, so I would make a motion that relative to friendly amendment, relative to instruction 2, that the city attorney clarify that the board of review is relative to the collections board of review and not the tax board of review.
Mr.
Whatever the appropriate legal.
Very well. Second by Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. Rosendahl wants a second. That's fine. So all we want to do basically is have our process be effective so the treasurer can do the job of collecting, and if people want to skip out, we'll have a way of going out and seeking those dollars that accounts to millions upon millions of dollars. But some of the process that we have in place really has to be brought up to a standard where we have some recourse, and for them just to use the service and then walk away, that doesn't work. But Mr. Alarcon's correct on his issue, which is a total different situation than what we're talking about with people who are incurring fees, whether the housing department or fire department or Department of Transportation or there was. And if we add it up, it's millions upon millions upon millions. So the recommendation with that amendment that we support would clarify, and then we can come back and make it work so we can be a little more aggressive. If people use the services, they got to pay. And if not, there'll be consequences for that. And that's what we're talking about.
We agree. That's correct.
All right. Very good, Mr. Zine. Mr. Rosendahl.
Just a quick comment. First, I want to thank Mr. Zine for his leadership at the Audit Committee. I have the privilege of serving with him on the committee. And Mr. Alarcon wanting a motion that would even clarify it more. So this is a good moment for all of us. But just give me the thumbnail. How much money we don't collect from fire and other issues every year that we can't collect? How much are we talking about?
That's I can probably provide some figures when we come forward with our quarterly report this month. I think in terms of budget, I believe both fire and transportation for parking citations and ambulance billings were approximately 100% of revenue in terms of what their revenue budget was. So they were effective in realizing their revenue goals. Obviously, we don't collect every dollar billed, though.
Yeah, but we have hundreds of millions of dollars we don't collect from ambulance and other issues. Is that correct?
I believe we collect approximately half of the amounts billed for ambulance billing.
So what kind of money is that?
Probably in the $60 million range or thereabouts.
Okay, thank you. That's it, Mr. President.
Mr. Zine?
In response to my colleague, Mr. Rosendahl's question, on housing department, we're talking about over $5 million. Department of Transportation, over $111 million. Fire Department, over $11 million. Public Works, almost $200,000. But what happens is we put this money in the budget, and then we're not collecting it, and then we're short. So the bottom line is people have found a way to skirt through the system in many cases. So we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that add up, and these are only a few of the departments. So we need to obviously come with a better system, because when we do that budget, we anticipate revenues, and when those revenues fall short, then we got a deficit, and we see the deficit growing larger and larger. So I think this will be a positive step forward with Mr. Alarcon's amendment to make it clear that this isn't going to interfere with VTAC and what they're doing, but what we already have established in place, a little more aggressive in what we need to do to collect the dollars.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Wait, she's going to respond. She's going to respond.
Right. Also, to add relative to fire, they've actually improved their collections efforts with the utilization of an outside company to do their collecting and billing. So we have seen improvements on the ambulance billing side of their shop, and we'll continue to work with them to make further improvements.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Krikorian. Pass. That completes the queue here. So on this item, Madam Clerk, we move forward. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
So ordered.
That clears the desk.
That clears the desk. Any announcements? Any announcements? Mr. Joe Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It gives me great honor and excitement that I introduce to you the newest member of the Buscaino family, Sophia Rose, who was born yesterday, 5 pounds, 13 ounces, 18 inches, to my sister, Michelle, and my brother-in-law, Dave. And we love you, Michelle. She's going to continue to do what she does best, and that's being a mom. And to my brother-in-law, David, who's going to, he got his girl finally. And to Sophia's big brothers, Massimo and Giovanni. And I assured Mitch Englander 18 years from now, Sophia will register to vote for Mitch Englander for governor. So congratulations, Michelle and David. We love you. And to Massimo Giovanni.
Thank you very much. Announcements? Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. Of course, we all know that today marks the anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks on our country. This evening at 6 o'clock in North Hollywood Park, we'll be conducting a memorial ceremony at the Grove of Trees, a tradition that was started by Councilmember LaBonge 4 years ago, I believe, and it is a moving tribute to the victims of September 11th who have roots in Southern California. I want to thank Councilmember LaBonge for his foresight in starting that tradition and initiating that Grove of Trees in North Hollywood Park, which is a great gathering place for all the people of the San Fernando Valley to come and remember September 11th.
That's very good.
It begins tonight at 6 o'clock.
On Tujunga near Magnolia, and thank you very much. We started that the first year after 9/11, and Sharon Romano, the great leader of the Hollywood Beautification, helped in that planning there. Also tonight at 7 p.m. at Station 88 on Sepulveda in Sherman Oaks, a very special memorial in front of the Firehouse 88. Mr. Zine.
Yeah, Mr. LaBonge, you and I were at that memorial this morning at 7 a.m. at Station 28 on Cahuenga, 27 on Cahuenga, recognizing the tragedy of September 11th. I just want to, out of respect for those 343 firefighters that passed away, 72 law enforcement officers also passed away. That was the largest number of law enforcement officers killed in one day in the United States of America, and that represented the Federal Bureau of Investigation, New York City Police Department, the New York State Department of Taxation Finance, the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, U.S. Secret Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So that particular day in New York, 72 law enforcement officers lost their lives, in addition to 343 brave firefighters, and we remember them. May they all rest in peace.
We remember that too, and remember that on the first day of January 2002, they were our guests, representatives of the Port Authority, NYPD, the Fire Department of New York, and the United States Marines on our float that then the Water and Power supported, and they got a 7-mile standing ovation as they represented the city in our own float. We all remember those today for 9/11. Are any adjourning motions? Adjourning motions? Please all rise for adjourning motions. Mr. Garcetti.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you everybody for the commemoration. I know that there was one at 10 a.m. at the in Mr. Reyes' district in the at the Hotchkiss Training Center. But I do very sadly rise to adjourn in the memory of Ray Dominguez, who was a great community activist. Mr. Reyes wanted to join with me on this, who lived in Elysian Valley, also known as Frogtown. He was a dear friend. Few of us knew that he was sick, but he passed away 2 days ago on September 9th, 2012. He was born on June 14th, 1944. He lived in Elysian Valley for 65 years, and his family lived in Elysian Valley for 5 generations. He was very involved in the Elysian Valley community, whether it was the new park that we just built on Riverside, whether it was the opening up of the Los Angeles River, whether it was the creation of a neighborhood council, whether it was the street lights, which he passed 2 days before we're about to turn on the lights, literally, that he fought for so many years, sidewalks that had never been repaired. We couldn't have done any of this without Ray. He'd been battling a respiratory ailment that resulted in his passing, but Ray and his wife Cece have been like family to the CD13 family. Our staff and alumni will miss him greatly. He is survived by his wife Cecilia, his son Raimundo, his daughter Laura, his grandson Ricky, and many, many nieces and nephews. Ray Dominguez, rest in peace.
Mr. Koretz.
I'd like to adjourn today in honor of Louise Emerson Brooks, who died on September 2nd at age 66 following a battle with cancer. Louise was a national leader in the LGBT civil rights movement, using her long career as a journalist and documentary filmmaker to help the movement communicate to and with the broader community. She was the communications director for California Faith for Equality during the Prop 8 campaign, and also served as the director of communications for a group called Integrity, the national LGBT Episcopalian organization, as well as its board secretary. She may be most remembered for her recent Voices of Witness video documentaries. These 3 films featured real people, gay and lesbian people from America and Africa, and most recently transgendered people, telling their stories in their own voices. These real people were able to break down myths and stereotypes in ways that more professional activists could only hope to accomplish. She's survived by her equally activist wife, the Reverend Susan Russell from All Saints Episcopal Church in Pasadena, who's appeared in this chambers on occasion, and her stepsons Jim and Brian, and her brother Fred and his family. May she rest in peace.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's with sadness that I ask that the Council adjourned today in memory of Roz Teller, a longtime Democratic activist that everyone in the Valley knew. Roz passed away on August 31st. She was a longtime member of the Los Angeles Democratic Party Central Committee and served on many of that committee's most important subcommittees. She was a member of the California Democratic Party Executive Board and the Executive Board of the Democratic Party of the San Fernando Valley for many, many years. Last year, she was named a Democratic Volunteer of the Year by the LACDP, and she was the 2012 Pat Eastman Volunteer Honoree at the Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt Awards. Many of you might have known Roz, too, from her professional work as a consultant to nonprofit organizations. She was very active and vocal volunteer and advocate for Barlow Respiratory Hospital, and worked very hard to find ways to modernize the hospital and to help people in that way, to keep the doors open at a time when the hospital faced many challenges. All of us here, or many of us here who represent the Valley, knew and loved Roz. She'll be sorely missed. I remember in my 2009 campaign, just as by way of example of the degree of commitment. Roz actually broke her leg walking precincts for me, but she came back and continued to work on the campaign even with her broken leg. That's the kind of activist that she was. In lieu of flowers, donations can be sent to Barlow Respiratory Hospital or the Democratic Party of the San Fernando Valley. DIPSIV is planning a memorial, details still to be announced. Roz is survived by Janet and Michael Teller, her niece and nephew, and many of us who knew and loved her throughout her years of activism.
Mr. Garcetti, Mr. Koretz, to comment.
Mr. Corrin, I didn't know when I was gone if there had been adjournment in Roz's memory. I was out there talking to so many mutual friends, and I remember sitting next to Roz, who was a dear friend of mine as well, at the Roosevelt Awards, and she always told it like it was. I won't say what race, but I remember her asking, who do you like in a certain race? And she's like, they all make me embarrassed to be Democrats. She was somebody who fought hard, who always had humor, who always made me smile, and reminded me what a Democratic activist is all about. Aggie Kessler, her dear friend who chairs Democratic Party of San Fernando Valley, and I talked a couple days ago at the headquarters, and everybody there was crushed. I talked to a couple of the callers. They're like, it just feels like an empty room without her there. I know that they're going to be setting something up, it sounds like, at Barlow, so we'll be sure to let people know. But thank you for the adjourning motion. If I could join Mr. Krikorian.
Mr. Koretz.
Well, Paul and Eric have said this perfectly, but she was just a wonderful person, a great, dedicated, progressive Democratic Party activist. And yes, she always told you what she thought, and she always backed it up with her activism. It's a somewhat sudden shock to hear that she passed. I didn't know that she was ill. I don't believe she was ill for an extended period of time. But we'll all greatly miss her, and I'd like to second that. I'm sure Mr. Garcetti as well.
All members.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Mr. Parks?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Leslie James Bernard, who was born June 1950, passed away September 2012. Leslie was the sixth of 16 children, completed his education in Natchez, Mississippi, and after graduating from Sadie V. Thompson High School, he moved to Los Angeles in 1968. He's survived by his wife, 3 daughters, and 14 siblings, and a host of other family members. Funeral service will be held at Academy Cathedral Church at 3141 West Manchester Boulevard in Inglewood on September the 14th at 1 p.m.
Ms. Perry?
I'd like to adjourn in memory of James Albert Figa, who was also known as Al. He was born May 23rd, 1938 in Beaumont, Texas, and died September 4th, 2012. He was raised in a tight-knit family. His mother and father were devoted parents who raised their children to be dedicated Catholics, and his early life was filled with good cooking, laughter, family picnics, and an abundance of love. He attended St. Leo's Elementary School and graduated from Manual Arts High School and furthered his education at Los Angeles City College. He also attended Los Angeles Trade Technical College, where he received a certificate in sheet metal, and he was one of only 2 African-American journeymen accepted into the sheet metal trade during that time. He also served in the United States Army. After a 6-year courtship, he married his soulmate Barbara Pullins on August 31st, 1963, and this couple celebrated 49 years of marriage, which totaled 55 years of being lifelong partners. They were more than husband and wife. They were best friends, business partners, travel buddies, and wonderful parents to Wayne and Angela. Al joined the Sheriff's Department on September 23rd, 1965, where he then dedicated 29 years of service, 23 of which were served in the Narcotics Bureau. He truly loved his job, and every day he experienced a new adventure up until the time he retired. After he retired, he traveled the world. He would always enlighten young deputies through his philosophy on money, exclaiming such profound thoughts as, "It matters not how much you make, but how much you save." And then he said, "Money will never rot in the bank." He is preceded in death by his father and mother and brothers, Clarence and Laverne. He is survived by his wife, Barbara, son Wayne, daughter Angela, granddaughter Courtney Kimbrough, brother Glenn, sisters-in-law Donna and Jacqueline, beloved cousins Mabel Little, Irvin Evans, Elizabeth Mouthery, Bert Castile, nieces Maya, Heather Lynn, Terry, nephews Michael, Stephen, grandniece Tyler, and a multitude of other adored cousins, nieces, nephews, great-nieces, and great-nephews. The services will be held in Inglewood Park on Wednesday, September the 12th at 10 a.m.
Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This man was 2 months away from being 100 years of age. Saban Nassif passed away August 27th. He was born October 17th, 1912. Parents, and born in Lebanon, a village, a few hundred people in the foothills of biblical Mount Lebanon. Relocated to Bismarck, North Dakota to realize the American dream. The family moved again to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where he spent his scholastic years before moving again to Hollywood, where he would enroll and graduate from USC before attending law school at the University of South Dakota. Proud U.S. veteran, having served the United States Army during World War II, known for having served on more bases than any other American soldier during the Second World War. Founded Saban's Carpets with operations in both Iowa and California, along with his beloved wife Ann, came to be known as the Carpenters to the Stars. Very civic-minded, contributed regularly to numerous charitable causes through his church, veterans organizations, and expanded family charities. On his sickbed, he said, "How wonderful it is to live this long and rich life, see my children, grandchildren, even great-grandchildren grow up. The future is now in their hands, but I sure had fun with the past." Great man who I knew personally, and I knew his family, made great contributions to our city, left a proud legacy. He will be missed. May he rest in peace. He is survived by 3 children, Alexis, Chris, and Paul Nassif, 8 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. Saban Nassif, may he rest in peace.
Thank you. Members, I ask we adjourn in memory of Joe South, who was a great singer-songwriter, 72 years old, wrote Walk a Mile in My Shoes, Games People Play, and Never Promise You a Rose Garden, etc., etc. I met him in 1969 when I was working at the Greek Theater as an usher. He was a tremendous singer and soulful man. He was 72 years old, survived by his son and grandson. His son his son Craig lives in North Hollywood. Joe South, the great American songwriter, singer. Members, this concludes today's meeting. Today is 9/11. Remember, every day is a blessing. Go forward.